The bright lights of the ESS Horizon's bridge dimmed as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Jack Howell stood near the captain's chair, his hands clasped behind his back. After 15 years as a Marine, he thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. "Unknown vessel approaching, sir," said Communications Officer Paula Wright. Her voice was steady, but Jack noticed how her fingers trembled slightly over her console. The year was 2157. Humans had mastered faster-than-light travel just 20 years ago. In that short time, they had built colonies on 4 planets in nearby star systems. The ESS Horizon was one of Earth's newest exploration ships, sent to push the boundaries of known space. Captain Frank Nelson nodded. On screen, the main view screen flickered to life. Jack felt his breath catch. The approaching ship was unlike anything humans had built. It was elegant, with smooth curves that seemed to bend the light around it. It was at least 3 times the size of the horizon. "They're hailing us, sir," Paula said. "This is it," the captain said quietly. "Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization." He straightened his uniform. "Open the channel." The alien that appeared on screen had blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. It spoke, and after a few seconds, the ship's translation software began to work. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Zixel of the Hegemony, representing the Galactic Confederation. We have been observing your expansion with great interest." Captain Nelson stepped forward. "I am Captain Frank Nelson of the Earth Ship Horizon. We come in peace and friendship." Zixel made a gesture that might have been a smile. "The Confederation welcomes peaceful contact. We are an alliance of 27 spacefaring species. We would like to invite your vessel to our nearest outpost for formal introductions." The captain looked at Jack, who gave a small nod. As the ship's security officer, his opinion carried weight. "We accept your invitation," the captain said. 3 days later, the Horizon docked at a massive space station. Jack led the security team that accompanied the captain to meet the Confederation representatives. The station was filled with beings of different shapes, sizes, and colors. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some floated. Some had scales, others had fur. Ambassador Zixel greeted them at the docking bay. Up close, the alien was taller than Jack had expected, nearly 7 feet in height. "Welcome to Outpost Delta," Zixel said. "We have prepared quarters for your crew. Tomorrow, we will begin formal diplomatic talks." As they walked through the station, Jack noticed how the other aliens watched them, some with curiosity, others with what looked like concern. During dinner that night, Zixel sat next to Jack. "I understand you are a soldier," the ambassador said. Jack nodded. "Marine lieutenant. I've served for 15 years. "Fascinating," Zixel said. "Humans have such a short lifespan, yet you spend so much of it training for combat. May I ask how many conflicts you have participated in?" 3 major operations, Jack said. He didn't elaborate. Zixel's large eyes blinked slowly. "And you survived all 3. Remarkable." Later, when the human delegation was alone, Captain Nelson called a meeting. "They seem friendly enough," he said, "but I sense they're particularly interested in our military capabilities." Jack agreed. The ambassador asked a lot of questions about our combat experience. Dr. Karen Benson, the ship's science officer, looked up from her datapad. "I've been reviewing the information they shared with us. It seems the Confederation has been at war with something called the Voidborn for over 100 years. 100 years? Paula asked. "That's a long war." "Maybe that's why they're so interested in us," Jack suggested. "They need allies." Captain Nelson frowned. "We need to be careful. We're representing all of humanity here. Let's not make promises we can't keep." As Jack returned to his quarters that night, he passed 2 aliens in the corridor. They stopped talking when they saw him. One of them, a reptilian being with copper scales, watched him with unblinking yellow eyes. "Is it true?" the alien asked in slightly broken English. Humans can continue fighting even after losing large amounts of blood. Jack blinked in surprise. Yes, sometimes. Depends on the injury. The aliens exchanged looks. Fascinating, one said, using the same word Zixel had used earlier. But Jack didn't hear fascination in its voice. He heard fear. 6 months passed since the first contact. Earth and the Galactic Confederation had established regular diplomatic meetings. Human ambassadors visited Confederation worlds, and alien representatives toured Earth's major cities. Susan Miller worked as a diplomatic attaché at the new Confederation embassy in Geneva. Her job was to help the aliens understand human customs and history. Today, she was showing Ambassador Zixel and 3 other Confederation representatives videos of human history. These are soldiers from World War II, Susan explained as black and white footage played on the screen. This war happened about 200 years ago. Zixel leaned forward, those large dark eyes fixed on the screen. The other aliens, a furry being named Krell, a tall insect-like creature called Vex, and a floating orb of light known as Elam, watched with equal interest. They fight in such close quarters, Vex said, mandibles clicking. And they continue even when injured. Humans are very determined, Susan said with a small smile. After the presentation, Zixel asked to speak with Susan privately. Your people are impressive, the ambassador said. The Confederation Council has been discussing your species at length. I hope they like what they've learned, Susan replied. They are impressed by human resilience and adaptability. Zixel paused. But some members find your capacity for aggression concerning. Susan frowned. We're not an aggressive species. We explore, we build, we create. Yes, but you also fight with an intensity we have rarely seen. Zixel's voice softened, which brings me to the reason for this conversation. The Confederation would like to make a formal request to your government. Later that day, Susan sat in a secure room with Earth's head diplomat, George Wilson. They want our soldiers, George asked, his eyebrows raised. Susan nodded. The war against the Voidborn is going badly for them. They've been fighting for over a century and losing ground. They think humans might make a difference. What do they offer in exchange? Advanced technology. Medical knowledge that could extend human lifespan by decades. Faster engines for our ships. George rubbed his chin. The United Government will need to vote on this. 2 weeks later, Earth's United Government agreed to send a small group of volunteer soldiers to help the Confederation as a show of good faith. The military selected experienced fighters who had proven themselves in Earth's recent conflicts. Lieutenant Jack Howell received the assignment notification while stationed on Mars Colony. His commanding officer, Colonel Alan Peters, delivered the news personally. You're being transferred to the Confederation forces, the colonel said, handing Jack a digital tablet. You and your squad will be among the first humans to serve alongside aliens. Jack scrolled through the information. What exactly will we be doing, sir? They need combat specialists to fight something called the Voidborn. Details are still classified, but apparently, these creatures have been pushing Confederation forces back for decades. And they think we can help. Colonel Peters shrugged. They've been studying our combat footage for months. Something about us interests them. Jack remembered his conversation with Zixel 6 months ago and the strange question from the reptilian alien. How many others are going? 50 soldiers in the first wave. If it works out, more will follow. 1 month later, Jack and his squad prepared to board a Confederation transport ship. The squad consisted of 5 soldiers: Jack, Sergeant Kathy Bryant, Corporal Don Martinez, Specialist Kyle Johnson, and Private Betty Flores. All had combat experience from the Mars insurgency 3 years earlier. Ambassador Zixel met them at the spaceport. Lieutenant Howell, the ambassador said, I am pleased to see you again. Jack nodded. My squad is ready for deployment. Excellent. You will travel to Outpost Sentinel for training and integration with Confederation forces. Zixel looked at each human soldier carefully. The journey will take 12 days in your time. When you arrive, you will meet Commander Krell, who will oversee your training. What should we expect? Sergeant Bryant asked. The Voidborn are unlike any enemy you have faced, Zixel said. They feel no pain, no fear. They fight until destroyed. They consume worlds. Private Flores shifted uncomfortably. Sounds cheerful. The Confederation has great hopes for your participation, Zixel continued. Some even believe humans might be the key to ending this war. As they boarded the alien ship, Jack noticed how the Confederation crew watched them, with a mixture of hope and unease. One crew member whispered to another, and Jack caught a few translated words. They look so fragile. How will they survive against the void? The Confederation transport ship docked at Outpost Sentinel after 12 days of travel. Jack led his squad through the airlock into a large docking bay filled with aliens of various species. The gravity felt slightly stronger than Earth normal, making their steps heavier. A large four-armed being with brown fur and a face that reminded Jack of a bear approached them. It wore what appeared to be body armor with insignia on the shoulder. I am Commander Krell of the Taurian Defense Force, the alien said through a translator device. I will oversee your training and integration into our forces. Jack saluted in human military fashion. Lieutenant Jack Howell and squad reporting for duty, Commander. Krell made a gesture with its upper right arm that might have been its species' version of a salute. Follow me to your quarters. Rest today. Training begins tomorrow at first light. Their quarters were small but comfortable, adapted for human needs with beds, showers, and familiar food synthesizers. The squad spent the evening reviewing information about Outpost Sentinel and the various alien species they would be working with. This is going to be interesting, Corporal Martinez said as he studied a holographic display of Confederation military ranks. The next morning, they reported to a large training area where 20 alien soldiers waited. The aliens varied in size and shape, some insect-like, others reptilian, and a few that seemed to be made of living crystal. Today we begin combat simulations, Krell announced. We will first assess your capabilities, then form mixed units for coordinated exercises. The first test was a simple obstacle course. The humans watched as the alien soldiers navigated barriers, climbed walls, and crossed water pits. When it was the humans' turn, they completed the course in half the average alien time. The Confederation soldiers whispered among themselves. Is that the best you can do? Krell asked, sounding surprised. No, sir, Jack replied. We were pacing ourselves. Show me your full capability. The humans ran the course again. This time, at maximum effort, they finished in a third of their previous time. The watching aliens fell silent. Extraordinary, Krell said. Your endurance is remarkable. Next came weapons training. The humans were given Confederation energy weapons and taught how to use them. The weapons were lighter and more powerful than anything humans had developed. During target practice, Private Flores hit every target with perfect accuracy. How? Asked a crystalline alien named Sure. The targeting system requires 3 eyes to use properly. I'm just aiming and shooting, Flores explained. Nancy Rhodes, the squad's medic who had joined them later, was monitoring their vital signs during the exercises. She noticed something odd. Commander Krell, she said during a break, I've been comparing our physiological data with the Confederation baseline you provided. Humans seem to recover from exertion much faster than your species. Krell nodded. We have noticed this. Your bodies rebuild damaged tissue at rates that would be considered regenerative among most Confederation races. The training intensified over the next few days. In combat simulations against training drones, the human squad consistently outperformed the alien units. They moved faster, reacted quicker, and showed greater endurance. During one exercise, Sergeant Bryant was hit by a low-powered energy blast that left a burn on her arm. She winced but continued fighting. You must seek medical attention, insisted Vex, an insect-like soldier. You are injured. It's just a burn, Bryant replied, continuing the exercise. Later, in the medical bay, Nancy examined the alien soldiers' reaction to minor injuries similar to Bryant's burn. They required rest and treatment for injuries the humans would consider minor. After a particularly intense training exercise where the humans fought until exhaustion against overwhelming odds, Jack overheard a conversation between Krell and another high-ranking officer as he walked past a partly open door. "They keep fighting even when logically they should retreat," the unknown officer said. "And they seem to function normally despite injuries that would incapacitate our soldiers," Krell replied. "The human problem is more significant than we anticipated." "Problem?" the other voice asked. "They might be exactly what we need against the Voidborn." "Yes, but what happens after the war? Can the Confederation safely exist with such a species among us?" Jack walked away quietly, troubled by what he had heard. He gathered his squad that evening. "We need to be careful," he told them. "I think they're as afraid of us as they are impressed." 3 weeks into their training, alarms blared throughout Outpost Sentinel. Red lights flashed in the corridors as Jack and his squad rushed to the command center. Commander Krell stood before a large holographic display showing a small planet surrounded by ships. "The Voidborn have attacked Colony Zeta 9, he announced to the gathered soldiers. "It is a civilian research outpost with minimal defenses." "How many civilians?" Jack asked. 832, Krell replied. "Mostly scientists and their families." A hegemony officer named Trell stepped forward. "Response time for the nearest battle fleet is 6 hours. By then, it will be too late." "We have 3 ships in the hangar," Krell said. "They could reach Zeta 9 in under 2 hours, but they are training vessels with limited weapons." Jack looked at his squad. They nodded in silent agreement. "We volunteer," he said. Krell blinked all 4 of his eyes. "You are not fully integrated into our command structure. This is not your fight." "Those are innocent civilians," Sergeant Bryant said. "That makes it our fight." Krell hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. You will join Strike Team Alpha. Commander Trell will lead the mission." 90 minutes later, 3 Confederation ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Colony Zeta 9. Through the viewports, Jack could see 4 black, angular Voidborn ships firing on the planet's surface. "First time seeing the enemy," Private Flores whispered. "They look like floating pieces of obsidian." Commander Trell addressed the strike team. "Our mission is to draw the Voidborn away from the colony long enough for evacuation ships to escape. We are outnumbered and outgunned. This is likely a one-way mission." The human squad exchanged glances. They had faced bad odds before. Their ship shook as it was hit by enemy fire. A nearby console exploded, killing 2 alien crew members instantly. "Communications are down," reported an officer. "We cannot coordinate with the other ships." Another blast rocked the vessel. Commander Trell was thrown across the bridge. He hit the wall hard and did not move again. "Commander is down," Specialist Johnson said, checking Trell's vital signs. "He's dead." The bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. Without their commander, the chain of command was broken. Jack stepped forward. "We need to act now. Who's next in command?" A reptilian officer named Sarn raised a clawed hand. "I am, but I have never led a combat mission." "Then let me help," Jack said. "We need to get the civilians out and keep the Voidborn busy." Sarn nodded. "What do you suggest?" Jack quickly outlined a plan. The 3 Confederation ships would separate. 2 would engage the Voidborn directly while the 3rd would slip past to the planet's surface to coordinate the evacuation. "It's risky," Jack admitted, "but it's our best chance." Sarn gave the orders. Jack and Corporal Martinez joined the team heading to the surface, while the rest of the human squad remained on the combat vessels. On the planet, they found chaos. Buildings burned, and terrified civilians ran in all directions. The Voidborn had landed ground troops, tall, black figures with too many limbs that moved with unnatural speed. "Get everyone to the central plaza," Jack ordered. We'll defend it until the evacuation ships arrive. Martins set up a defensive perimeter with the few armed colonists they could find. Jack led a team to search for survivors in damaged buildings. In one collapsed structure, Jack found a group of alien children huddled in a basement. They were small, with blue skin and wide eyes filled with fear. "It's okay," Jack said gently. "We're here to help." He carried 2 children while leading the others to safety. Along the way, they encountered 3 void-born soldiers. Jack put down the children and drew his weapon. "Run," he told them. The firefight was brief but intense. Jack took a hit to his shoulder that burned through his armor, but he kept fighting until all 3 void-born were down. In orbit, the Confederation ships were taking heavy damage. Sergeant Bryant had taken command of one ship's weapon systems after the alien gunner was injured. She targeted the engines of a void-born vessel, disabling it. "How did you know their weak point?" asked an amazed Confederation officer. "I watched how they moved," Bryant replied, targeting another ship. On the surface, the evacuation ships began to arrive. Jack organized the civilians into groups, prioritizing children and the injured. A void-born soldier broke through the perimeter, heading straight for a group of young aliens. Jack intercepted it, engaging in hand-to-hand combat when his weapon was knocked away. The fight was brutal. Jack suffered deep cuts to his arms and torso, but managed to break the creature's neck. Bleeding heavily, he continued directing the evacuation. "You need medical attention," Martinez insisted. "After everyone is safe," Jack replied. The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, all civilians were evacuated. 2 void-born ships were destroyed, and the others retreated. The cost was high. 1 Confederation ship was lost with all hands. Their own vessel was badly damaged. Of the 30 soldiers in the strike team, only 14 survived. But the mission was recorded and transmitted throughout Confederation space. Billions of aliens watched as humans fought with unprecedented determination to save people they had never met before. In the medical bay afterward, Jack learned that the Confederation military leadership had called an emergency meeting to discuss what they had witnessed. News of the successful defense of Colony Zeta-9 spread quickly through Confederation space. The recordings of humans in combat became the most viewed data files in Confederation history. Alien civilians watched in awe as Jack carried children to safety while bleeding from multiple wounds. Military analysts studied how Sergeant Bryant instinctively found the void-born ship's weak points. 1 month after the battle, the Confederation High Command requested more human soldiers. Commander Eric Daniels stood before Earth's United Government in Geneva. At 45, he was one of Earth's most experienced military leaders, with gray beginning to show in his black hair. "The Confederation is asking for 500 human soldiers," he explained to the assembled officials. "They want us to reinforce a critical shipyard that builds their largest warships. Intelligence suggests the Voidborn are planning a major attack there." President Laura Kemp leaned forward. 500 is a significant escalation from our initial 50 volunteers. "Yes, Madam President, but after the success at Zeta-9, they believe humans are uniquely suited to combat the Voidborn." "What does Lieutenant Howell report?" asked General Ortiz. "His assessment has been reliable so far." Commander Daniels pulled up a message on his tablet. "Lieutenant Howell believes the request is reasonable. He also notes that the Confederation seems both impressed and disturbed by human combat capabilities." After 3 days of debate, Earth's government approved the deployment. Commander Daniels was placed in charge of the battalion, with Jack Howell promoted to captain and serving as his second in command. The human forces arrived at Shipyard Epsilon 2 weeks later. The massive facility orbited a gas giant, with dozens of warships in various stages of construction. Lisa Barrett, a human intelligence officer assigned to the battalion, met with Captain Howell shortly after their arrival. "Something interesting is happening," she said in a low voice. "I've been monitoring Voidborn fleet movements. They're changing their patterns." "How so?" Jack asked. Lisa showed him a star chart with highlighted sectors. "They're retreating from areas where human forces are deployed, even when they outnumber us significantly. Jack frowned. They're afraid of us. Why? I don't know yet, but the hegemony is taking a special interest in us. They've been collecting data on human combat performance without Earth's knowledge. Before Jack could respond, alarms sounded throughout the shipyard. The expected Voidborn attack had begun. The battle for Shipyard Epsilon lasted 6 days. The human battalion worked alongside Confederation forces to repel wave after wave of Voidborn ships. Commander Daniels organized the defense into rotating shifts, allowing his troops to rest while maintaining constant pressure on the enemy. On the 3rd day, a Voidborn boarding craft breached the shipyard's outer defenses. A dozen human soldiers led by Sergeant Bryant intercepted them before they could reach the command center. The fight was brutal, but all the Voidborn boarders were eliminated with only 3 human casualties. Admiral Vorex, the shipyard's commander, watched the humans with a mixture of gratitude and unease. Your soldiers fight as if they enjoy it, he commented to Commander Daniels. Not enjoy, Daniels corrected, but we are good at it. It's part of our history. By the 6th day, the remaining Voidborn ships retreated. The shipyard had suffered damage, but no ships under construction were destroyed. The Confederation hailed it as a major victory. In the aftermath, Lisa Barrett continued her investigation. Using her intelligence training, she gained access to a restricted hegemony research facility within the shipyard. There, she discovered files comparing humans to ancient weapons of mass destruction. One report read, "Human combat effectiveness exceeds all known species by several orders of magnitude. Their endurance, pain tolerance, and pack-bonding behaviors make them uniquely dangerous. Their ability to function despite severe injury surpasses even Voidborn." Another file contained intercepted Voidborn communications. Lisa's eyes widened as she translated the alien language. Avoid direct combat with the new allies of the Confederation. They are the death world predators of old legends. Retreat if encountered. Lisa copied as much data as she could before leaving the facility. She needed to tell Captain Howell what she had found. That night, she met Jack in a secure room. "The Voidborn know about us," she explained. "They've encountered humans before, long ago, and they're terrified of us." "That doesn't make sense," Jack said. "We only developed faster than light travel 20 years ago." "I don't understand it either," Lisa admitted. "But both the Voidborn and the Confederation see humans as something unprecedented, something frightening." Jack thought about the conversation he had overheard at Outpost Sentinel. "They called us a problem." "Yes," Lisa said, "a problem that might win their war for them." But then what? 1 year passed since humans first joined the war against the Voidborn. In that short time, the tide had turned dramatically. The Confederation had reclaimed 12 star systems previously lost to the enemy. Human soldiers now served on the front lines of every major battle. Captain Jack Howell stood on the observation deck of the Confederation flagship Guardian, looking out at the stars. His uniform bore new scars, just as his body did beneath it. He had fought in 17 battles now. A message arrived on his communicator. "Captain Howell, your presence is requested in Strategic Command. Priority 1. When Jack arrived at the command center, he found Admiral Vorex, Commander Daniels, and representatives from 7 major Confederation species seated around a large table. Holograms of star systems floated above them. "Captain Howell," Admiral Vorex said, "please join us. We are discussing the final offensive against the Voidborn." Jack took a seat next to Commander Daniels, who nodded in greeting. "As you can see," Admiral Vorex continued, "we have pushed the Voidborn back to their home territory. For the first time in a century, we have the opportunity to end this war completely." "And how do humans factor into this plan?" Jack asked. A hegemony general named Dax answered, "Human forces will lead the main assault. You have become our primary combat asset." Jack noticed how the alien officials exchanged glances. There was something they weren't saying. After the meeting, Commander Daniels pulled Jack aside. "They're using us as their hammer," Daniels said quietly. Every major battle plan now centers around human troops. I noticed, Jack replied. Did you see the casualty projections? They expect to lose 30% of alien forces, but 50% of humans. Because they know we'll take the risks others won't, Daniel said. We need to be careful, Jack. I'm not sure our allies and our enemies are as different as we thought. Meanwhile, Lisa Barrett was continuing her investigation. She had spent months gathering data on both the Confederation's use of human soldiers and the Voidborn's unusual reaction to them. Today, she had managed to access the most restricted section of the hegemony database. What she found made her blood run cold. The files contained detailed studies of human physiology, psychology, and combat behaviors. The hegemony had been analyzing humans since first contact, comparing them to every known species in the galaxy. One report concluded, humans are the only known sentient species that evolved as persistence predators, with pack-hunting behaviors. Their bodies are designed to pursue prey to exhaustion. Their increased adrenaline response in danger situations creates temporary superhuman strength and pain resistance. Even more concerning, they appear to form emotional bonds with other species and will fight to protect them with the same ferocity they show for their own kind. Another document contains something even more shocking, classified footage of what appeared to be humans from centuries ago, dressed in primitive clothing, fighting against early Voidborn scouts on Earth. The timestamp indicated the recording was over 400 years old. Lisa downloaded everything she could and immediately sought out Jack. She found him in his quarters, reviewing battle plans. Jack, you need to see this, she said, transferring the files to his tablet. The Voidborn have been to Earth before, long before we had space travel. Jack's eyes widened as he viewed the footage. That's impossible. These people are wearing clothes from the 1700s. The Voidborn have been watching us for centuries, Lisa said, and they're terrified of us. That's why they attacked the Confederation. They were trying to prevent humanity from joining the galactic community. Jack connected this new information with everything he had seen over the past year. The way Confederation species both relied on and feared human soldiers, the strange questions about human combat capabilities, the overheard conversations about the human problem. We need to talk to Commander Daniels, Jack said. The Confederation isn't telling us everything. They met with Daniels in a secure room, away from alien monitoring devices. Lisa presented her findings. So this whole war, Daniels said slowly, might be because the Voidborn were trying to stop humans from reaching the stars. That's what it looks like, Lisa confirmed. And now the Confederation is using us as their primary weapon against an enemy that specifically fears us. The question is, Jack added, what happens when the war is over? If they're this concerned about our combat abilities now, how will they feel about having humans spread throughout their territory when there's no common enemy? Daniels looked grim. I think we're about to find out. The final offensive begins in 3 days. The day of the final offensive arrived. The largest fleet in Confederation history gathered at the edge of Voidborn space. 500 ships formed a massive wall of steel and energy, with the flagship Guardian at its center. Commander Daniels addressed the human forces via holographic projection. 500 faces looked back at him from various ships throughout the fleet. Today we end this war, he said. The Confederation has asked us to lead the main assault on the Voidborn command ship. It will be dangerous, but we have all seen what these creatures do to civilian worlds. We fight not just for Earth, but for all peaceful species in this galaxy. On the Guardian's bridge, Jack stood with Admiral Vorex as the fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. We detected unusual activity in the Voidborn fleet, Vorex said, showing Jack a tactical display. They appear to be gathering all their remaining ships to defend their home system. A last stand, Jack observed. Yes, and they have something we have not seen before. Vorex zoomed in on a massive black structure at the center of the Voidborn formation. Their command ship. It is larger than any vessel we have encountered. That's our target, Jack said. The jump to Voidborn space took just minutes. When the fleet emerged, they found themselves facing hundreds of enemy vessels. The battle began immediately. Energy weapons flashed across the void. Ships on both sides exploded in silent bursts of flame, quickly extinguished by the vacuum of space. Commander Daniels led the boarding party aboard the assault ship Striker. Their mission was to fight their way onto the Voidborn command ship and capture or kill their leadership. The Striker took heavy damage as it approached the massive black vessel. Voidborn ships swarmed around it like angry insects. "We're not going to make it through their defensive screen," reported the Striker's captain. Daniels looked at his team of 50 human soldiers. "We need a diversion." Sergeant Bryant stepped forward. "Sir, if we launch all escape pods simultaneously with engine signatures that mimic attack craft, their defense systems might be overwhelmed long enough for us to get through." "That would leave us without a way back," Daniels pointed out. "We'll find another way home after we complete the mission," Bryant replied. Daniels nodded. "Do it." The plan worked. While the Voidborn weapons targeted the decoys, the Striker slipped through the defensive screen and crashed into the command ship's hangar bay. The human strike team poured out, weapons ready. They encountered heavy resistance immediately. The Voidborn fought with desperate intensity. "They know why we're here," Daniel shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "Push forward to the command center." The fighting was brutal. The humans advanced room by room, corridor by corridor. They suffered casualties but kept moving forward with relentless determination. Private Sam Collins was hit by 3 energy blasts, but continued firing until he collapsed. Corporal Mia Wilson lost an arm but used her remaining hand to throw grenades that cleared a path for her comrades. Back in the main battle, Confederation ships were taking heavy losses. Admiral Vorex watched the tactical display with growing concern. "We cannot sustain this level of casualties much longer," he told Jack. "We just need to hold until Daniels reaches the command center," Jack replied. Aboard the Voidborn vessel, the human strike team finally fought their way to the central chamber. Only 23 of the original 50 remained. Commander Daniels, bleeding from a wound in his side, led the final push. The doors to the command center opened to reveal a sight none of them expected. The Voidborn Supreme Commander was enormous, at least 12 feet tall, with multiple limbs and gleaming black skin that seemed to absorb light. It spoke, its voice translated by captured Confederation technology. "The Death World Hunters," it said. "You have come at last." Daniels raised his weapon. "Surrender your forces, or we will destroy this ship." The Voidborn commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "You do not understand. We fought this war to prevent exactly this moment. Humans spreading among the stars, bringing their violence to every world. We came in peace," Daniel said. "You attacked first. Because we remembered. We visited your world centuries ago. We saw what humans did to each other. How you hunted, how you killed. No other species enjoys combat as you do. No other species seems designed for warfare." Before Daniels could respond, the Voidborn commander touched a control panel. Screens around the chamber lit up, showing battles throughout the fleet. Humans fighting with incredible ferocity, continuing despite injuries that would stop any other species. "Look at yourselves," the Voidborn commander said. "Even now, you're injured still fight. This is why we feared you." To everyone's shock, the commander then activated the ship's communication system and broadcast a message to all Voidborn vessels. "This conflict is ended. Initiate surrender protocols." The final battle for the galaxy was over, not with a desperate last stand, but with an unexpected surrender. 3 months after the war's end, the Galactic Confederation convened an emergency council on their capital world. Representatives from all 27 member species gathered in the Grand Chamber, along with delegates from both Earth and the former Voidborn Empire, now calling themselves the Shroud Collective. Susan Miller represented Earth at the proceedings. Captain Jack Howell, Commander Eric Daniels, and Lisa Barrett sat beside her as military advisors. The room was tense with unspoken concerns. High Chancellor Zorn of the Hegemony called the session to order. We gather today to address a matter of galactic security. The recent conflict has brought to light certain issues that require immediate attention. Susan leaned toward Jack. "This doesn't sound good," she whispered. Chancellor Zorn continued. "For over a century, the Confederation fought the Voidborn, losing countless lives and dozens of worlds. Yet, in a single year after human involvement, the war was won." Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. "We owe humanity a great debt," Zorn acknowledged. "However, we cannot ignore the implications of what we have witnessed." A large screen descended from the ceiling. It displayed footage of humans in combat. Jack carrying injured alien children, while bleeding heavily. Sergeant Bryant fighting on despite severe wounds. Commander Daniels leading the final assault with a punctured lung. Confederation xenobiologists have conducted extensive studies of human physiology and psychology, Zorn explained. Their findings are concerning. Dr. Mira, a Taurian scientist, stepped forward. "Humans are unique among all known sentient species. They evolved as persistence predators with pack-hunting behaviors. Their bodies produce chemicals during combat that increase strength and mask pain. They can continue fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate any other species." Dr. Mira displayed comparison charts. "Most concerning is that humans are the only known species whose brain chemistry shows positive reinforcement from successful combat. In simple terms, humans can enjoy fighting." Lisa looked at Jack. This confirmed everything she had discovered in the Hegemony files. The representative from the Shroud Collective rose next. "Our ancestors visited Earth centuries ago. They witnessed humans fighting each other with primitive weapons and remarkable ferocity. Our civilization determined then that if humans ever reached the stars, they would pose an unprecedented threat to galactic peace." Susan stood up, anger in her voice. "So you started a war that killed billions because you were afraid of what humans might do?" "Yes," the Shroud representative admitted. "We believed it was necessary. We were wrong in our methods, but not in our assessment." Chancellor Zorn raised his hands for quiet. "No one disputes that humans fought to protect others, not to conquer. But the fact remains that your species possesses combat capabilities that exceed all others by several orders of magnitude." Commander Daniels spoke up. "What exactly are you suggesting, Chancellor?" "The Confederation Council has voted to create a new galactic law," Zorn announced. "Humans will be forbidden from serving in combat roles in any military force, including their own when operating in Confederation space." The human delegation erupted in protest. In exchange, Zorn continued over the objections. "Humanity will be offered unprecedented technological and economic benefits. Your research vessels will have access to all Confederation worlds. Your merchants will receive favorable trade terms. Your scientists will be welcomed in our greatest institutions." "But you want to disarm us," Susan said. "No. We want to direct your remarkable energies toward exploration and creation rather than destruction. Earth may maintain defensive forces, but offensive combat units like those deployed against the Voidborn will be prohibited." After hours of heated debate, Chancellor Zorn called for a recess. The human delegation gathered in a private room. "They're afraid of us," Commander Daniels said, "after everything we did to help them." "Not afraid," Jack corrected. "Terrified. And maybe they should be." He activated a small projector showing combat footage from an alien perspective. The humans moved with frightening speed and continued fighting despite injuries that would kill most species. Viewed through alien eyes, humans did appear terrifying. Susan sighed. "What do we do?" "We accept their terms," Lisa suggested. "We've seen what war does. Maybe there's wisdom in this restriction." 3 days later, Susan Miller signed the treaty that would become known as the Combat Prohibition Act. Humanity would explore the stars not as warriors, but as explorers, diplomats, artists, and builders. As Jack prepared to return to Earth, Chancellor Zorn approached him.